It wasn't about catching them, I already knew. It was about control. I needed to dictate the pace of their downfall. The next day, I acted like nothing was wrong. I kissed Claire before I left for work, sent her a text at lunch, even planned a dinner date for the weekend. I wanted her to think everything was normal. That she was getting away with it. And Daniel? I made a point to visit him. Show up at his office, shake his hand, look him in the eyes and say, "We need to catch up, man. It's been too long." He swallowed hard. Yeah, for sure. I almost laughed. That night, I checked the camera feed. And there they were. Again. Daniel's hands on my wife. Claire whispering things to him that she used to whisper to me. I watched every second of it. Because soon, I'd make them watch, too. This was just the beginning. The footage was worse than I imagined. It wasn't just sex, it was the way they looked at each other. The way Claire giggled, the way Daniel touched her like she belonged to him. Like I was nothing. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. This wasn't just about rage anymore. This was about precision. I made a copy of the footage and stored it securely, then deleted the original from the hidden camera. No loose ends. The next day, I started my first real move. At work, I pulled up Daniel's contact on my phone and sent a message. Me, hey, man. I need a favor. Can you meet me at Miller's Bar tonight? He replied within minutes. Daniel, yeah, sure. Everything okay? Me, yeah, just need some advice on something. I smiled. He took the bait. That evening, I arrived early, choosing a booth in the corner. A place with dim lighting, where people minded their own business. Daniel walked in a few minutes later, looking almost nervous. He forced a grin. What's up, man? I gestured for him to sit. I just wanted to talk. Catch up, you know. He nodded slowly. Yeah, of course. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make him uncomfortable. Then, I leaned forward. I feel like Claire's been acting different lately, I said, watching his reaction. Distant. Like something's off. His fingers tightened around his beer glass. Daniel was unraveling. I could see it in his posture, in the way he stammered when we talked. My words at the bar had taken root, festering in his gut like a disease. Good. But Claire? She was different. Calm. Confident. Completely unaware that the world she had built with her lies was already burning around her. I wanted to change that. The next night, I staged my second move. After dinner, I kissed Claire on the cheek and told her I was heading out for drinks with some co-workers. She barely reacted. Probably relieved to have the house to herself. I drove a few blocks away, parked, and pulled up the live feed from the hidden camera. It took less than an hour. Daniel arrived right on time. I watched them sit on my couch, talking, laughing. Comfortable in their betrayal. Claire leaned into him, her hand on his thigh. Daniel ran his fingers through her hair. I clenched my fists but forced myself to stay still. This wasn't the moment to lose control. Instead, I sent Claire a text. Me, miss you already. I watched as she picked up her phone, read my message, and then put it down without responding. The final nail in the coffin. I smirked and started my car. Time for the next step. I drove straight to Daniel's apartment. Let myself in with the spare key he had given me years ago, back when we were actually friends. The place was a mess. Clothes on the floor. Empty beer bottles. A laptop sitting on his desk, still open. Perfect. I plugged in a USB drive, quickly installing a small keylogger. Nothing complex, just enough to track his messages, his emails. Enough to give me access to his life the way he had invaded mine. As I left, I sent him a text. Me, hey man, what are you up to? I imagined the panic on his face when he saw it. Sitting next to my wife, in my house. Sure enough, I saw him stiffen on the live feed. He grabbed his phone, stared at the screen, then showed it to Claire. She laughed. Laughed. I grinned. Oh, she wouldn't be laughing for long. The walls were closing in. They just didn't know it yet. The trap was set, and all I had to do was watch as Daniel and Claire fell into it, piece by piece. The keylogger worked better than I expected. Within a day, I had access to Daniel's messages. Every text, every email, every secret he thought was buried. And what I found? It was worse than I imagined. They had been seeing each other for almost a year. A year. While I celebrated anniversaries, planned vacations, and held Claire in my arms at night, she had been sneaking off with my best friend. But the real gem. Claire had been talking about leaving me. Not now. Not yet. But soon. She was waiting for the right time. She had even written out a message she never sent. Ethan is getting suspicious. I don't know how much longer I can do this. I need to find a way out before he figures everything out. I sat back in my chair, letting the words sink in. She thought she could leave me before I had the chance to strike. No. That wasn't how this was going to play out. That night, I decided it was time to push them further. I sent Daniel a message. Me, hey man, been thinking a lot about Claire acting weird lately. I'm starting to worry. Can we talk? It was a simple message, but I knew it would shake him. Within minutes, I saw him typing. Then stopping. Then typing again. Finally, he responded. Daniel, yeah, of course. What's going on? I smirked. Me, not sure yet. Just have a bad feeling. Maybe I'm being paranoid, but I keep thinking there's something she's not telling me. This time, it took him longer to reply. Daniel, you don't think she's cheating, do you? I almost laughed. The audacity. Me, God, I hope not. That would destroy me. I knew exactly what I was doing. And it worked. The next time I checked the live feed, I caught something new. Claire and Daniel weren't just sneaking around anymore. They were arguing. Whispered, panicked words. Claire waving her hands. Daniel rubbing his face like he was on the verge of breaking. They were cracking. And I was just getting started. They were breaking. I could see it in the way Daniel hesitated before answering my texts, the way Claire's usual confidence started to slip. But I wasn't done. It was time to apply real pressure. The next morning, I woke up before Claire and left a note on the kitchen counter. Had a rough night. Thinking too much. Maybe we should take a weekend trip, just the two of us. I need to reconnect. It was bait. When she came downstairs, she read it, chewing her lip. That's sweet, she said, forcing a smile. Where were you thinking? Somewhere quiet, I said, sipping my coffee. No distractions. No phones. Just us. That hesitation again. The calculations in her head. That sounds nice, she finally said. Liar. I left for work, checking my phone an hour later. Right on cue, she messaged Daniel. Claire, Ethan wants to go away for the weekend. Just us. He says he needs to reconnect. I think he knows something. Daniel, shit. What do we do? Claire, I don't know. Act normal. Let me handle it. Let her handle it. Oh, I'd love to see what she came up with. That night, she played the loving wife again. Cuddled up next to me, ran her fingers through my hair. Even initiated sex for the first time in months. Desperation. I played along, whispering sweet nothings, telling her how much I loved her. How much I trusted her. And the whole time, I was watching the clock. Because 5 minutes before she kissed me goodnight, she had texted Daniel. Claire, I'm keeping him distracted. Don't panic. Distracted? No, Claire. I wasn't the one being played. You were. And very soon, you'd know just how badly. They thought they were controlling the situation. That if they played their parts well enough, I'd stay blind. But I wasn't blind. I was waiting. The weekend trip was coming up fast, and I could see the tension building in Claire. She smiled more, kissed me more, but it wasn't love, it was damage control. And Daniel? He was barely holding it together. His responses to her texts were frantic, paranoid. I decided it was time to make my first real move. At lunch, I sent Daniel a message. Me, hey, I need a huge favor, man. It took a minute before he responded. Daniel, sure. What's up? Me, Claire and I are going on that trip, but I need you to stop by the house while we're gone. Check on things. Maybe water the plants, make it look like someone's home. I imagined him staring at his phone, sweating bullets. Finally, he replied. Daniel, yeah, of course. No problem. Perfect. That night, I made sure Claire saw me packing my bags, humming to myself like a man who didn't have a care in the world. She watched me, searching my face for doubt. She found none. Because I was in control. Then, the final touch. As we lay in bed, I sighed and ran my hand down her back. I feel so much better, I whispered. I think this trip will fix everything. She stiffened for a fraction of a second. Then forced a smile. Me too. Liar. She didn't know that while we were away, Daniel would be walking into a trap. Because I had prepared something special for him. And when he stepped into my house, thinking he was alone, he'd come face to face with something he never expected. A secret he thought would stay buried. And by the time he realized what was happening, it would be too late. The morning of our trip, I played my part flawlessly. I packed the car, kissed Claire on the forehead, and held her hand as we drove out of town. She kept sneaking glances at me, testing the waters, making sure I was still the trusting fool she needed me to be. She had no idea. 2 hours into the drive, I accidentally left my phone out on the center console, screen unlocked. Just for a moment. Long enough for her to see the message I had sent to Daniel earlier that morning. Me, thanks again for helping out at the house, man. I owe you one. She stiffened, eyes flicking from the road to my phone. Bingo. Daniel's stopping by while we're gone, she asked, forcing her voice to stay light. I nodded. Yeah, just to check in. Make sure everything's okay. She stared ahead, jaw clenched. Probably wondering if she could warn him. If she could find a way to stop whatever was coming. She couldn't. By the time we arrived at the cabin, Daniel had already walked straight into my trap. I had set up everything the night before. The hidden cameras. The speakers. The carefully curated nightmare waiting for him. The moment he stepped inside my house, the TV turned on automatically. And there I was. Not in person, no, that would have been too easy. It was footage. A video of him and Claire on my couch. Her straddling him. His hands on her. Their voices, clear as day. And then, my voice, pre-recorded. Calm. Even. Hello, Daniel. I wish I could have seen his face. The footage cut to another scene, Claire's messages, her words laid bare on the screen. Ethan is getting suspicious. I need to find a way out before he figures everything out. Then, my voice again. How does it feel, Daniel? To see yourself like this? To know I've been watching this whole time. I imagined him frozen in horror, looking around, wondering if I was hiding in the shadows. But I wasn't there. I was miles away, sitting by the fire in the cabin, watching Claire pretend to love me while her world burned behind her. And Daniel? He was trapped. Panicked. And soon, he'd make a mistake. And when he did, I'd be ready. Daniel took the bait exactly as I had hoped. The keylogger on his laptop showed everything. The moment the footage played in my house, his messages to Claire became frantic. Daniel, he knows. Jesus Christ, he knows. Claire, what? What do you mean? Daniel, there was a video. Of us. He recorded us, Claire. Claire, no. No, that's not possible. Daniel, he played it on his goddamn TV. He's been watching us this whole time. I sat in the cabin, watching the messages roll in while Claire sipped wine across from me, completely unaware that her world was imploding behind her. She still thought she had control. That was about to change. Daniel was spiraling. His paranoia was consuming him. And Claire? She was still trying to hold everything together, desperately convincing herself that this wasn't real. But it was real. And it was about to get worse. I excused myself, stepping outside into the cold mountain air. Pulled out my phone and sent Daniel a message directly. Me, come clean, Daniel. Before it's too late. The moment I hit send, I watched the live feed from his laptop. He was pacing in his apartment, sweating, hands shaking as he typed. Daniel, Ethan, man, please. Let's talk. Me, like friends. Like we used to be. No response. Me, I trusted you. You slept with my wife. In my house. Again and again. Tell me, Daniel, was it worth it? His typing was erratic now. Daniel, please. Just, let me explain. I let him sweat for a full minute before replying. Me, oh, I don't need you to explain. I need you to confess. And then, I attached the footage. I imagined him watching it in horror, knowing I had him completely in my grasp. He was mine now. And soon, Claire would be too. Daniel broke before the night was over. I watched the live feed from his laptop as he paced back and forth in his apartment, running his hands through his hair, muttering to himself. Then, he did exactly what I wanted him to do. He called Claire. I put my AirPods in and listened through the keylogger's audio access as she answered. Daniel. Her voice was tight, strained. She had just stepped out onto the porch of our cabin, away from me. Probably thought I wouldn't hear. You need to listen to me, Daniel said, voice shaking. He knows everything. There was silence. Then Claire whispered, Are you sure? Of course I'm sure. He sent me the footage. Claire, he's been watching us. He has everything. Another silence. I could almost hear her brain working, trying to strategize. Then she said something that made me smile. We can still fix this. Fix this? Oh, Claire. How? Daniel hissed. You don't fix something like this. We're caught. Claire's voice turned soft, manipulative. Ethan loves me. He won't hurt me. I can talk to him. Calm him down. But you need to disappear for a while. Daniel scoffed. Disappear? Are you insane? She exhaled sharply. Do you have a better idea? That was it. The moment she chose self-preservation over loyalty. Daniel had been her secret, her escape. But now, he was a liability. And she was cutting him loose. I could practically feel his world crumbling through the phone. You're unbelievable, he muttered. You're just gonna save yourself. Claire sighed. I don't have a choice. I grinned. That was all I needed to hear. I ended the audio stream and walked back inside the cabin, where Claire sat on the couch, pretending everything was fine. I sat next to her, pulling her into my arms, kissing her forehead like I still loved her. And I whispered, I don't know what I'd do without you. She smiled. And I smiled back. Because I already knew exactly what I was going to do to her. Claire thought she had time. Thought she could manipulate her way out, twist me around her finger like she always had. She was wrong. The morning after her call with Daniel, I watched her carefully. Every glance, every hesitation, every carefully chosen word. She was building up to something, probably rehearsing a speech in her head, figuring out how to gaslight me into thinking I was imagining everything. I let her. Over breakfast, she sighed dramatically, stirring her coffee. Ethan. I need to talk to you about something. I looked up, feigning curiosity. Yeah. She hesitated. I just feel like, you've been distant lately. Is something wrong? Distant? I almost laughed. She was setting the stage. If I took the bait, she'd slowly lead the conversation where she wanted, turning herself into the concerned wife, subtly making me the paranoid, untrusting husband. I played along. I don't know. Maybe I have been distant. I forced a sigh, shaking my head. I guess I just feel like something's been off between us. She leaned forward, touching my hand. It's nothing, baby. Just life. Stress. I held her gaze, watching her lie to me so effortlessly. I squeezed her hand. You're probably right. She smiled, relieved. She thought she was winning. But the moment we got back home, I was going to rip her world apart. Claire thought she still had control. She had no idea she had already lost. The drive home was quiet. Claire thought she had smoothed things over, but I could feel the tension radiating off her. She kept glancing at me, searching for any cracks in my expression. She found none. She had no idea that while she was trying to manipulate me, I had already laid the final trap. By the time we pulled into the driveway, Daniel had already made his move. Desperate. Panicked. Exactly as I had planned. The moment Claire stepped inside, her phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Daniel, what the hell did you do? She frowned, typing back quickly. Claire, what are you talking about? I watched her closely as she read his next message. Daniel, he sent everything to my job. The footage. The texts. I just got fired. Claire paled. Her breath hitched. Something wrong? I asked, locking the door behind us. She shook her head quickly. No, just a work thing. Lie. I stepped closer, forcing her to meet my eyes. You sure? She swallowed hard. Yeah. I need a minute. She turned, practically sprinting up the stairs, phone clutched tightly in her hand. I smiled. She had no idea that Daniel wasn't the only one who got the footage. Claire's family had it now. Her friends. Even her boss. She was about to lose everything. And the best part? She still thought she could fix this. She had no idea she was already drowning. And I was just watching her sink. Claire locked herself in the bedroom. I could hear her pacing, her frantic breathing as she tried to control the damage. I let her struggle. I sat downstairs, sipping a drink, watching as my phone lit up with notifications. Messages from her family. Friends. Even a few mutual acquaintances. They all saw it. The betrayal. The lies. Her world was crumbling in real time. Then, finally, she came down the stairs, phone clutched in her shaking hands. Her face was pale, her eyes red. Ethan, she whispered. We need to talk. I took a slow sip of my drink, then set it down. Do we? Her lips trembled. Someone sent, she exhaled sharply, trying to compose herself. That video. The messages. They got sent to everyone. My parents. My job. I don't know how. I tilted my head. Don't you? Her eyes snapped to mine, widening. Silence. She wasn't stupid. She was putting it together now. The way I'd been acting. The way I never truly accused her, but never reassured her either. She knew. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It was you. I leaned back, watching her. What did you expect, Claire? My voice was calm, measured. That you could do this, and I'd just, what? Move on. Her chest rose and fell in sharp breaths. Ethan, please, I can explain. I laughed. Explain. I stood, stepping closer, and she instinctively backed away, You had a year to explain, Claire. A whole year. I shook my head. You didn't want to explain. You wanted to hide. Tears welled in her eyes. I made a mistake. No, I cut her off. A mistake is a drunken kiss. A one-time thing. I gestured around us. This was planned. You let him into our home. Our bed. You made me the fool. She covered her mouth, sobbing. I didn't mean to. I clenched my jaw, stepping even closer. You did mean to. I lowered my voice. You meant all of it. She broke. Sinking to her knees, face in her hands. She had no excuses left. No one to run to. Daniel was ruined. Her reputation. Shattered. Her future? Gone. She had nothing now. Exactly what she deserved. And the best part? I wasn't even finished yet. Claire knelt on the floor, shaking, broken. I had spent months planning this moment, but now that it was here, I felt nothing. No rage, no satisfaction, just emptiness. She had destroyed everything, and I had simply returned the favor. I crouched down, leveling my gaze with hers. Tell me, Claire, I said, my voice calm. Was it worth it? She sobbed harder. No answer. Pathetic. I stood, walking to the table where my phone rested. You should probably check your email, I said. She hesitated, then, with trembling hands, unlocked her phone. A few seconds passed. Then her breath hitched. What did you do? Her voice was barely above a whisper. I watched as she scrolled, taking in the damage. Her employer's response, your services are no longer required. Her parents' message, we're disappointed in you. Don't contact us. Her friends. Silent. She was alone. I just told the truth, I said simply. You did the rest. She dropped her phone, covering her face again. Ethan, please what? I asked, tilting my head. Forgive you. Take you back. I let out a bitter chuckle. Claire, you don't exist to me anymore. She looked up at me, eyes desperate. I can fix this. No, you can't. I cut her off. It's already done. I picked up my bag, the one I had packed before we left for the cabin. I was already gone. Claire reached for me, grabbing my wrist. Wait, where are you going? I pulled free, staring down at her. Anywhere but here. And with that, I walked out the door. No screaming. No final words. Just the sound of my footsteps fading as I left her to drown in the ruins of her own betrayal. The end of us. The end of her. She cheated on me with my friend. They will pay for it. I always thought betrayal would come with a warning, some shadow of doubt creeping into my mind, a hesitation in her voice, a shift in his eyes. But no, it came silently, like a knife sliding between my ribs while I was smiling. My name is Ethan Carter. 34 years old. A husband. A man who believed in loyalty. And a fool. It started with little things, subtle, almost dismissible. Claire, my wife of 7 years, had always been the affectionate type. The kind who reached for my hand in the middle of a conversation, who left me sleepy I love you texts before bed, even when I was right beside her. But then, those things changed. The texts became sporadic. The kisses became mechanical. The late nights became frequent. I told myself it was stress. Work. Something else, anything else. But a gut feeling gnawed at me. Then there was Daniel. My best friend since college. The kind of guy everyone liked. The kind of guy I trusted with my life. He had been around for everything, my wedding, my job promotions, even my father's funeral. A brother in all but blood. And lately, he had been around even more. Too much. One evening, I came home earlier than expected. Claire had mentioned she was working late, so I planned to surprise her with dinner. It was a simple thing, a small gesture, one I never got to make. As I walked toward the house, I saw Daniel's car parked outside. A harmless thing, right? Just a friend visiting. But then, I saw something else. Through the thin curtain of our living room window, I saw them, Claire, sitting too close to him on the couch, her hand resting on his thigh, his fingers grazing her jawline. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. My mind screamed for me to storm inside, to tear him apart, to demand an answer. But I didn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone and took a picture. Not for proof, no, I didn't need proof. I needed clarity. I needed to know what my next move was. I stepped away, heart pounding in my ears, and drove off. I didn't go far. Just far enough to think. By the time I returned, Daniel was gone, and Claire was in bed, pretending everything was normal. She didn't know I had seen. She didn't know that something inside me had shifted. And she sure as hell didn't know that this wasn't going to end the way she thought. This was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I lay beside Claire, listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing, wondering how long she'd been deceiving me. How many nights had Daniel sat on my couch, touched my wife, and then looked me in the eye like nothing had happened? Rage was the first emotion. Raw, searing, all-consuming. But I didn't let it take over. Not yet. Instead, I smiled. A real, genuine smile. Because now, I had an advantage. She thought I was in the dark. I spent the next few days playing my part, carefully studying her every move. She acted normal, too normal. She still kissed me in the mornings, still asked about my day. But now, I saw the hesitation. The way her eyes flickered when I mentioned Daniel in passing. The way she checked her phone just a little too often when she thought I wasn't looking. And Daniel. He was worse. Avoidant. Jumpy. The bastard couldn't even meet my gaze for more than a second. Good. Let the guilt eat at him. But guilt wasn't enough. I wanted them to suffer. I needed to know how deep this betrayal ran. So, I set a trap. One evening, as Claire was getting ready for bed, I casually mentioned that I'd be heading out of town for a last-minute work trip. A couple of days, I said. Just business. She hesitated, just for a second, but then smiled. Oh, okay. I'll miss you. I bet you will. The next morning, I kissed her goodbye, walked out the door, and drove down the street. But I didn't go far. I parked a block away, turned off my lights, and waited. It took less than 2 hours. Daniel's car pulled up. My pulse pounded as I watched him walk up to my front door, casual as ever. No hesitation, no second guessing. Like he'd done it 100 times before. Claire let him in. I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. The anger threatened to take over, but I forced myself to stay still. Not yet. I pulled out my phone and started recording. I wanted to see how far they'd go. I wanted to know just how much they thought they could get away with. Because soon, very soon, they'd realize something. This wasn't a secret anymore. This was a game. And I was about to play. I watched from my car, gripping my phone as the recording continued. Daniel and Claire disappeared inside, the door closing behind them like a final nail in the coffin. I could have stormed in right then. Confronted them. Screamed. Fought. But that would have been too easy. Too merciful. Instead, I waited. An hour passed. Then 2. Finally, Daniel walked out, adjusting his shirt, looking around like a man with something to hide. He got into his car and drove off. I exhaled slowly. Now, I knew. It wasn't just a moment of weakness. Not a drunken mistake or a lapse in judgment. It was deliberate. Repeated. Calculated. And so was my next move. I didn't go home right away. I drove to a cheap electronics store and bought a small, discreet hidden camera, one with a motion sensor and a live feed. Then, I headed home. Claire was in bed, scrolling through her phone, pretending to be waiting up for me. "You're home early," she said, smiling like nothing had happened. I kissed her forehead. "Yeah, things wrapped up faster than I thought." She didn't ask for details. Of course, she didn't. I took a quick shower, my mind racing. Then, while she slept, I crept downstairs and installed the camera. Right in the living room, near the couch. The same spot where I'd seen her touch him.